We're going to have class on the Uttaratantra Shastra, and same as tomorrow. After tomorrow, we will put a pause to our class. I was thinking to give some teachings on something slightly easier, for example, about cause and effect, about taking rebirth in the Pure Land and so on, I think would be better. But this is the plan that I have right now. For those of you without much solid foundation in Dharma teaching, you may feel these classes are rather a bit difficult. But I still encourage all of you to listen with great faith. After our class today, we will still have the after-class presentation, and tomorrow the post-class presentation will be given mainly by the lay practitioners. We can arrange it accordingly then. Also, I do not have any audience right now. I don't have any personal audience or interviews with anyone right now. After this class, if you want to go back to your residence and take a break, that's fine. If you really want to stay here and listen to the presentation, I think it would be the best for you to only listen in to the after-class presentation rather than engage in other activities such as prostrations and so on, because that would disturb the ones who engage in after-class presentation. I did not arrange anything special for this period of time. On one hand, it is because the pandemic is still not over, so I do not have any public or private audience. Another reason is that the reason that you're being here, also I encourage all of you to do so, is to make the aspiration to generate virtue and merit while you're still here. So engage in various kinds of practices. Especially, this is going to be the month of the Buddha of turning the Dharma wheel. Various people came forth and told me that they're here to celebrate my birthday, but I don't think a birthday is something that should be celebrated, because a birthday only signifies that you're getting older and you're a year closer to be dead. And why would you congratulate someone who is only closer to death? This is aggravating for people getting older and reminding them that they're getting closer to death. So I think the best way of celebrating it would be releasing life. Other than that, other than benefiting sentient beings, other than using this opportunity to benefit sentient beings, I have no other intention, and I have no other requirement from all of you to celebrate my birthday. On top of that, I won't be in Larangar at the time of my birthday, so I hope that you do not arrange any events or any activities to celebrate the birthday. Another thing is that, in fact, this particular month is very auspicious. It's the month commemorates the turning of the Dharma wheel of Shakyamuni Buddha. Therefore, many lay practitioners came here. During this summer break, not only here, many lay practitioners, I heard that they went to Chashi Monastery, they went to the Mount Wutai, went to the various pilgrimage sites for Buddhism. Also, lots of those church and the other sites of interest as well. So there are all kinds of tourists everywhere. But since we're still closed over here in Laronggar, we're not open to the tourists yet. We don't have that many people. But still, it is really important for all of those who already traveled here and participating in various virtuous actions to abide the rules of Laronggar. For example, the female practitioners should not enter the designated areas of the male practitioners and vice versa. You should follow the rules of Laronggar because you're here to create virtue rather than the vice. Therefore, it would be the best for you to abide the rules that's set forth for over 40 years, though we don't have the history of hundreds and thousands of years, like the monasteries in mainland China or in Japan. For example, there are some monasteries in Japan, they have the history of hundreds of years. We are considered as a very young monastery, a very young institute. We don't have a very long period of history, but we still need to abide the rules that's made by Phuntsog Rinpoche when he was still alive. So for the lay practitioners over here, I hope that while you're being here, do not travel about in Laronggar and seek for this toku and that toku. Maybe they are not genuine tokus, you never know. I think many of the lay practitioners are still developing an understanding of this faith, and they don't really know what Buddhism is or what faith is. And their faith is like a sprout that's a little sprout that's just sprouted from a seed, and they don't really know what genuine faith is yet. So they're still testing. And since they're so new as beginners, in fact, they should be more aware of the environment, and they should be more aware of what genuine faith is by engaging in study and contemplation of the Dharma. So circumambulating the mandala and engaging in various practices such as making aspirations and having some porridge over here, and those would be good. But do not engage in any of the activities that would violate the rules that's set forth over here. We have a very pure Dharma practice center. As a lay practitioner, once you're here, I encourage all of you to generate faith as well as respect. Do not engage in various activities that would lead to uncertain results. For example, inviting people that you don't quite know and so on and so forth. So that's something I would like to address before the actual class. Today we're going to study Uttaratantra Shastra. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of eons. I now see it here, receive it, and uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning.
当응급当좀 장종 라미 덤바当的손지当 Jambar namdak jimit sherib stakdar nambar chur shivshi tonggan zigba chur yishi lena nyamma nga ganga leksam tamchit yishi ngunru jisan jigba dang diksam stakda toba me bam timbar yachin jigba de gang sto drovaran jigme tamchun korlo chimbo rapkorwa 특제 진보 당든 겨라 니때 상계 남기 니 살아 소 사소 라요 추강 연비 추니 때는 남칸만 남김 산이 즈밋 라솜 산이 강데 즈글라메드 사치 메로 남칸 총반 직된 떡나 텀몽 때 만지 년너 듣진 자면 직된 떡나 텀몽만 今天我们就是继续讲这个
Well, let's continue with Uttaratantra Shastra, where we're talking about the qualities of the Buddha. We're currently talking about the 32 types of qualities of the Buddha that is related to the Dharmakaya. And then later we're going to talk about the 32 marks of the Buddha that's related to the manifestation. So in terms of the first 32, we already talked about the 10 powers and the 4 fearlessness. Currently, we're studying about the 18 unmixed qualities of the Buddha, and we've already talked about the first 6 out of the 18 qualities that's related to conduct. And today we're going to talk about the 6 unmixed features of realization and then the 3 that's related to activity, and the 3 more that's related to primordial wisdom.
就是也就是说这个佛陀的其他的就是12个这个功德
So let's look at the 12 out of 18 today.
我们总的来讲呢就是佛陀是跟我们这个世间的
First of all, the Buddha is very different than all of us, the ordinary beings, and very different still in terms of the qualities compared to the Pratika Buddhas and the Shravakas and the Bodhisattvas. First of all, the Buddha is an enlightened one who is the mentor of the human beings as well as the celestial beings. According to Clear Light of Realization, where it talks about the Buddha has the 2 main aspects of the qualities, that is eradication and realization. According to Mahaparamita Shastra, it says that one should know that there is only one person, that is the Buddha, who knows correctly of all the phenomena, can liberate from all kinds of obscurations. The 2 obscurations, the various obscurations, such as the obscuration of meditation, obscuration of affliction, and so on, are all liberated by the Buddha. And he had attained all kinds of virtue and accomplishment. So such kind of unique and one of only is the Buddha. In terms of the good kalpa, the Buddha at our time is Shakyamuni Buddha. So whenever we are studying this Uttaratantra Shastra, we need to develop a clear understanding of the unmixed qualities, unmixed features of the Buddha. Some of the Buddhists, in fact, they don't even understand the qualities and features of the Buddha. They don't even know who the Buddha is or how to understand the Buddha. They would feel that the Buddha is just similar to Socrates and Plato and Confucius and Mencius. All of those philosophers or people who made contribution to our world, or someone who's very smart, they would perceive the Buddha at the same level as those group of people. But after this time, since we've already got the opportunity to study the various qualities and features of the Buddha, we would be able to generate a profound feeling towards the Buddha. I've thought about whether I should only briefly talk about the various merits and qualities of the Buddha, and I can finish it in one class, or should I give teachings in a rather explicit way and where I can explain it further. I was requested to do the latter. That is, in fact, people came forth and asked me to further expound the various qualities of the Buddha. When I was translating the biography of the Buddha, the extensive biography of the Buddha, the White Lotus, I generated the profound faith towards the Buddha because of the various qualities and features of him. So I think it's essential for all of us, the Buddhists, to generate understanding and faith towards the Buddha from this aspect. Some of the big religions and the followers of such, especially the numbers of the followers of the big religions, they surpass the numbers of the Buddhists. However, I believe if people were to engage in detailed studies of the teachings and of the teachers or the leader of that particular religion, I think they would come to recognition and realization that, in fact, the Buddha is of the most supreme. It is because, let it be whomsoever was born at a certain time at a certain place, are there descriptions and records of describing such teachers' quality and the treasures that's left behind. Is any of those teachers, in fact, left the treasure of the teaching on emptiness and on the teachings that would lead people to liberation? Many religions, though they included lots of teachings on compassion and love. Those are very important, of course, but are there any teachings that touches even on the border of the profound teaching of emptiness? In the past, we had World Youth Buddhist Symposium where we hosted it for 8 times, and the 8th one, the 8th symposium, I in fact didn't have the opportunity to engage in that symposium. Usually we would set up a platform where we can have the interreligious dialogues, or we would set up a platform where people from all walks of life, for example, scientists as well as religious people, to engage in conversation and dialogues. Many professors, scientists, asked questions to one another, and they would ask and inquire about the teachings and philosophy of Buddhism as well, and they would wonder what is the key faith of Buddhism. And we would also talk about the view of emptiness and the 6 paramitas. All of them indeed felt that the teachings in Buddhism is much more profound than they used to know. There's a teaching that's called Praises of the Buddha that surpass that of the celestial beings. if you were to study this text, you would be able to understand how the Buddha surpassed all the other beings in various ways. It is not that you have a simple pure faith towards the Buddha and feel that, oh, I heard that the Buddha is really good, therefore I'm going to prostrate and revere him. It is not like that only. In fact, the Buddha has unique qualities and realizations and features. After knowing all of those unique aspects of the enlightened one, then you can generate the firm faith towards the Buddha with the foundation of your wisdom. So we need to engage in contemplation of that. Now let us continue with the verse, where now it started to talk about his aspiration, diligence, mindfulness, and discriminative wisdom are unimpaired, as are total release and its eye of wisdom, or its wisdom of total release. Today we're going to look at the 6 unique or mixed features that's related to realization. And the first one is aspiration, and then diligence, mindfulness, and discriminating wisdom, as well as total release and the view, or the wisdom. According to Mahabharata Sutra, where at the end of it, it says that it is the view of the liberation, do not regress, do not retrogress. So the teachings over here are more elaborated in the Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra. Let's look at the first one out of the 6. The first one is aspiration. Aspiration is something that the Buddha is seeking. When the Buddha was still at the causal stage, he continuously seek for the teaching that is profound, the profound Dharma teachings, the truth. And because of that, he did not eradicate the disposition of the 3 jewels. Therefore, the aspiration of benefiting sentient beings do not retrogress. So that's a concentration. And second one is the diligence. The diligence meaning the longing to benefit the others, and such kind of joyfulness that's generated from benefiting others, and such kind of diligence with joy do not retrogress. It is because he relied upon teachers and to mature sentient beings. And then the Buddha's right mindfulness do not retrogress, especially the right mindfulness of virtue do not retrogress. Unlike the ordinary beings like us, sometimes whenever we are happy, when everything is going smoothly, then we would seek for the virtuous actions, and we would engage in virtuous actions. However, whenever there are obstacles, then right away we no longer have such kind of right mindfulness seeking for virtue. I remember there's a story according to Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra where it says that there was once an old bhikshu whose sight was impaired, and he was trying to mend his monastic robe. but he couldn't because his eyesight was impaired. And then he started asking the others, saying that who wants to accumulate merit by mending my robe? And then the Buddha right away came forth and said that I do, I want to accumulate merit and virtue. So this old bhikshu, though cannot see the Buddha, he heard the voice of the Buddha, and then he asked the Buddha, saying that as a Buddha, you already accumulated the full amount of virtue. Then why do you still come forth to mend my my robe, so that you can accumulate more merit? And then the Buddha stated that though I have already acquired full merit, and from the profound level of talking about merit, there is nothing for me to seek anymore. However, I do not give up the diligence and willingness to accumulate virtue. We can see that at the stage of being perfected in accumulation of virtue, the Buddha still acquires virtue in a relative sense. People nowadays would come forth and ask me, well, I've already finished my nonzhou, I've already accomplished so-and-so practice, therefore I don't have to accumulate merit anymore, right? But that is not true. The Buddha, after attaining full enlightenment, his aspiration of seeking for virtue still is ongoing. Therefore, as an ordinary being, we definitely have to seek for the virtuous deeds and seek and engage in all kinds of virtuous actions as well. After attaining such full enlightenment, the Buddha's actions do not retrogress in terms of the virtuous deeds. The second one that we studied was diligence. The Buddha relied upon the teachers, the virtuous guide, as well as making offering to the teachers. On top of that, he had matured the mind stream of the sentient beings through various ways. And after attaining full Buddhahood, he still takes delight in diligently benefiting sentient beings and practice all such kinds of virtuous deeds with great diligence. People may wonder, well, after attaining fruition, after attaining the perfect fruition such as Buddhahood, do we still have to be diligent? Well, here's the answer. There's a story of the Buddha between Ananda. There was once the Buddha told Ananda, saying that I have backache. The Buddha manifested in such a way. And then the Buddha said that since I have backache, then I ask Ananda, you, to give teachings to the others, to the bhikshus. And then the Buddha folded his robe into a pillow, and then he lay down. Ananda then gave teachings to the whole Sangha on the topic of the 7 branches of enlightenment. When it comes to the branch of diligence, the Buddha all of a sudden sat up and then told Ananda, saying that, are you talking about the quality, and are you talking about the various virtuous qualities of diligence, Ananda said, yes, I am. And then after repeating it, the Buddha said, that's excellent. If you were to practice with great diligence, then one can definitely attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. When the Buddha, when he's ill, he's still very diligent, or manifesting illness, he's still really diligent. Then for all of us, we need to do that as well. Some of the Dharma teachers once received various praises from their disciples. They would feel that, oh, they don't have to be diligent anymore because they are already attained great realization. But according to some Shastras, it says that the Dharma teacher should not listen to the foolish disciples. And that is one of the examples. You should not listen to their speech of asking you to stop being diligent. Right before the Buddha's passing into parinirvana, when the Buddha, at the very end, he already laid down in between the two sala trees, and the Brahmin Shubhadra came forth to the Buddha. He was the last person liberated by the Buddha throughout his lifetime then. So Shubhadra then came forth to the Buddha and then asked the questions at the time of the Buddha's passing into parinirvana, and then the Buddha still answered his questions. Shubhadra passed into parinirvana then, even before the Buddha. So for the ordinary beings like us, for the Dharma teachers as well, maybe you're ill physically, maybe there are times, for example, right before the time of death, if there are people having questions about the Dharma, you should still try your best to answer their questions and to benefit them in whichever way possible. Ponsok Rinpoche didn't finish giving teaching on Uttaratantra Shastra because he said that I need to take a break after giving Uttaratantra Shastra, and then he passed away halfway through giving this teaching. I think this is his way of showing that it would be the best to give teachings even when he's ill, and such kind of diligence without retrogression is just like the Buddha. I hope all of us, the practitioners, do not generate a sense of contentment just because you listen to certain texts or certain numbers of texts. We need to continuously be diligent towards the virtuous deeds and virtuous teachings. We should not retrogress in terms of our joyful mind towards we should not retrogress in terms of taking delight in practice the virtuous Dharma or engage in studying the Dharma. So those are the first two aspects of not retrogressing. And the third non-retrogress is non-retrogress of right mindfulness. The Buddha, after practicing the four right mindfulness in the stage of, in the causal stage, then he gained the observation of right mindfulness. So the observation of right mindfulness over here is different than the ones, that kind of mindfulness is different than the ones that's stated in the Bodhisattva Charavatara, and it's very different than the ones in Theravada as well. So that kind of right mindfulness of the Buddha is very unique, unmixed with none of the other Yana's teachings. And then the Buddha's wisdom do not retrogress. It is because the Buddha never generated contentment towards the seeking of the three wisdoms. And because of such, the Buddha then gave teachings to the sentient beings with great skillfulness in terms of method and time. The wisdom of knowing the truth and omniscience, those two types of wisdoms would not retrogress for the Buddha. The young people, I think, we can see from ordinary beings that when they are young, they seem to have lots of wisdom, but when they get old, there is definitely a clear sense of retrogression of wisdom. The Buddha, the fifth one, says that because the Buddha had eradicated all kinds of distractions and practiced at secluded area, then the Buddha attained the non-retrogression of liberation that is devoid of obscurations. So the Buddha does not have any distraction, does not have any obscurations of meditation, unlike how the Shravakas sometimes would encounter obstacles in terms of meditation. But the Buddha does not have any of those obscurations. The ordinary beings or even the Shravakas, sometimes after attaining certain level of realization, such realization can retrogress. But for the Buddha, the realization of the Buddha would not retrogress at all. So that is the fifth point, that the liberation or the level of attainment of total release would not retrogress. And then the sixth one says that the Buddha's wisdom that leads to the total release and leads to the primordial wisdom that can illuminate on all phenomena in this world, such kind of wisdom do not retrogress either. It is because the Buddha had given teachings to the other sentient beings with his level of realization and with his practice, he understood the dependent origination. And for those reasons, he had then attained such kind of fruition that is non-retrogression of the primordial wisdom of total liberation. And then to continue over here in this particular commentary, it says that over here it doesn't really talk about samadhi. Because you can look at samadhi or put samadhi as a part of being even and having great equanimity. That is the second aspect. Or think of it as the third aspect of the part of the realization. Or if you want to talk about samadhi, then you can combine aspiration together with diligence, or combine the fifth and sixth of the six teachings of the, or six aspects of the realization. So there are the ways of arranging it. Let's look at the 3 unmixed features by activity. We've already talked about 12 out of the 18 unmixed features. Now let's look at the last 6. The last 6 also are divided into 2 categories. That is the 3 unmixed features of activity and then the 3 unmixed features of primordial wisdom. So the first 3 refers to the activities of body, speech, and mind in terms of body, because the Buddha had already eradicated all kinds of deceiving and fraudulent actions in terms of the physical body, in terms of the activity of the body. Therefore, the Buddha had attained all kinds of miraculous powers of the particular manifestation of the body, but such kind of unmixed activity of the body is preceded by primordial wisdom. There was once an arhat who had the habitual patterns from his past life as a cow, and he would eat something and then spit them out and then swallow them again, just like how cows usually do through the various stomachs. And then there are the practitioners who carried out various activities that's inappropriate to the level of realization because of their past karmic retribution. Just like some of our monastics over here, though they have already been ordained for many years, they still carry on those habitual tendencies of singing, dancing, and so on. Not sure if it is because all of a sudden they remembered their past life experience, or because of the distraction of the environment. But the Buddha is completely different. In fact, all the actions of the Buddha are to benefit sentient beings, including smiling and all kinds of actions. From the 400 verses of Madhyamika, it says that the breathing, the inhaling and exhaling of the Buddha are conducted for the benefit of sentient beings. So such small actions of the Buddha are to benefit sentient beings, are conducted because of the benefit of sentient beings. The Buddha, in fact, could commute in a way that human beings can't. For example, floating in mid-air and travel in such a way. But the Buddha manifests in the way that he would step on the ground just like the human beings do. And for such kind of miraculous manifestation of the Buddha, the purpose of such is to benefit sentient beings, and the cause of it, or the preceded reason, is primordial wisdom. Whenever you travel about or use your body to carry out any activities, you should also contemplate on whether your activities of the body is to benefit sentient beings. That's something to observe by yourself. And the second one is in terms of speech. The Buddha had already eradicated all kinds of deceiving speech and speak only of the speech of benefit to the sentient beings. The Buddha only speaks of the truth, speaks of the language of gentleness, and speaks of the language that is neither speak in the tone that is neither too high nor too low. Unlike yesterday when I had a meeting with a volunteer over here and I asked him not to speak too loudly. Some people have a high pitch naturally, and there are people who have a natural low pitch voice. And there are Sangha member over here. I kept on asking them to turn up their voice, but they couldn't. Within our Sangha, there are people who speak just like a speaker, where their sound would be really loud in a room, and they're the ones whom speak at the volume that is very low and difficult to hear. But the Buddha, in fact, his speech is perfect, and it is the most appropriate at all times. Sometimes I really want to. Sometimes when I'm eager to speak, I tend to speak fast. But the Buddha's speech is neither too fast nor too slow. Upon hearing his voice, all sentient beings would be able to generate virtue in their mind stream. The Buddha's wisdom and aspiration, because he had already eradicated all kinds of greed and desire in his mind. Therefore, in terms of his mind, there is no mind of creating suffering to the others, of harming others, of deceiving the others. There's no such vice mind activity of the Buddha at all. In terms of the body, I forgot to mention this. According to Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra, it says that whichever way the Buddha would manifest, that it be the form of celestial beings or bhikshus, bhikshunis, nagas, or celestial beings, human beings, or of any form, the Buddha's form of existence would be of benefit to all different classes of beings. So the body, speech, and mind are preceded by primordial wisdom, and such kind of body, speech, and mind are of beneficial to sentient beings and bring forth a sense of comfort and ease to sentient beings. Unlike the ordinary beings, sometimes they would bring comfort and happiness to the others when they're happy, but when they're not, then they would only bring forth negativity and darkness to the other sentient beings. But the Buddha do not waver in terms of his mood or in terms of the beneficial aspiration of his body, speech, and mind. And the Buddha acts in accordance to all kinds of situations appropriately. According to the Sutra of Upholding Roots of Virtue, it says that in this world, the Buddha is of the most supreme, as he could bring refuge and comfort to all the suffering beings. Whenever we study the various merits of the Buddha, I think as ordinary beings feel a sense of admiration. When we look at ourselves, we feel that we're full of afflictions and we're full of flaws and full of all kinds of suffering. But whenever we look at the Buddha, naturally we generate a sense of longing to attain whatever the Buddha has, because that is the most beautiful, the most ideal. Especially nowadays, when we look at samsara, when we look at this Saha world, it is full of imperfections and full of suffering. I am paying attention. I've been paying attention to news lately, especially when I look at the Olympics that's going to take place in Japan. I'm thinking that in such a small island, if they were to gather a large amount of people during pandemic, they are. I wonder if they're going to be in an incubator for a variety of variation of the new virus or not, but I'm probably just worrying about it for no reason. Of course, they cannot withdraw the decision of hosting such Olympic, otherwise they would generate a great economic loss of $166 billion US dollars. There are there's also the news that's happening in the world that Biden recently asked the withdrawal of American military force from Afghanistan, and then that really left the Afghanistan retaliation force towards Taliban helpless, because especially the translators that worked for the U.S. Army, they are facing the life-threatening hauntings from the Taliban. Because of such swift withdrawal of American military force, it in fact is creating great difficulties in Afghanistan right now. For mundane beings, we can all use beautiful words, and we can use all kinds of descriptions at the beginning of any activity. However, the beings of Saha world would inevitably generate great amount of suffering to oneself and others, let it be in the state level, let it be in a personal family level. None of the ordinary beings can generate the kind of perfect situation or the perfect kind of body, speech, and mind like the Buddha. And then the three unmixed features of primordial wisdom. So those are the last three of the 18 unmixed features of the Buddha. In terms of the last one, it refers to the primordial wisdom. All actions. It refers to the obscured primordial wisdom with regard to time. The Buddhas of the past, future, and present Buddha, they have the ability to they have such kind of omniscience of seeing the past, the future, and present. They perceive everything that's happening in the past and future and the present with direct perception, just like how we human beings would look at mango trees. It is of great clarity. All the sentient beings' afflictions and negative karmic retributions and so on and so forth can be perceived by the Buddha with his direct perception. He can see it just like how we can see the how we can see mangoes on the mango trees. The Buddhas could see the past, future, and present with the primordial wisdom that is unobscured. So now we've already covered the 18 unmixed features. Now let's look at the next verse where it says that thus these 18 features and others are the unmixed qualities of the teacher. So the six unmixed features pertain to conduct, and 6 unmixed features of realization, the 3 unmixed features of activity, the 3 unmixed features of primordial wisdom. Altogether, it sums up to 18 unmixed features. All these 18 unmixed features can subjugate the heretics and the maras. And such 18 unmixed features, as well as the immeasurable forms of subjecting all maras and heretics, as well as the supreme physical manifestation that is beyond the measurement of height, and his Ushnisha cannot be perceived. Also, whomsoever could perceive him, could see the Buddha, would be just like receiving the most wondrous medicine that could put a stop to all kinds of faults and afflictions of the sentient beings. So those are the kinds of unmixed features of the Buddha that would not be the same of the other Potagalas, and let it be Shravakas, Patika Buddhas, or the Bodhisattvas. Now we're going to look at the function of the 18 features. So in terms of the features and the attainment aspect, we're going to repeat the 18 unmixed features. Delusion, idle talk, forgetfulness, mental agitation, ideation of duality, and indifferent equanimity. The sage does not have any of these. His aspiration, diligence, and mindfulness. So he is not deluded. The Buddha is not deluded. The Buddha does not have any frivolous talk. The Buddha is not forgetful. And the Buddha does not have any mental agitation. The Buddha does not have any distraction. As long as the sentient beings have already accumulated the favorable causes and conditions, the Buddha will definitely cross them over to liberation. For ordinary beings like us, whenever we see a person longing for the Dharma, we, of course, at the beginning, we want to benefit them, but later, maybe with the various kinds of obstacles, then we would give up such kind of aspiration. So our mind is constantly wavering and changing. But according to the Vinaya Sutra, I used to be able to remember this particular teaching from Vinaya Sutra in Tibetan language, but somehow I forgot about it. I couldn't recite it anymore. It shows that I am forgetful compared to the Buddha that is unforgetful. And in the sutra it says that though there are wavering of the ocean, the ups and downs of the ocean waves, or it is subjected to change of time. However, to the sentient beings that the Buddha is going to liberate, the Buddha's mind of benefiting them never expires. To continue in the verses over here, it says that he's utterly pure and unstained discriminative wisdom, his constant total release, and his primordial wisdom of liberation, seeing all fields of the knowable and do not suffer any impairment.
这是这样的，就是因为刚才前面讲了，就是利他的这种娱乐呢不会退失
The
的，
Buddha's
然后喜欢散发的
aspiration
精
of
进也不会退失的，照见一切
benefiting
万法的
sentient
这个
beings
真念也不
do
会
not
退失的，
retrogress,
还有这个
nor
没有
does
任何
his
烦恼的智
diligence,
慧也不
right
会退失，
mindfulness,
还是呢
undefiled
这个解脱
wisdom,
一切障碍的那种这个解脱智慧，
the wisdom of
还有就是能
attaining
照见
full
所有的这个
liberation
经
is
所有
ever
有所有的
constant
法的这个
and
这种这个
non-retrogression.
解脱智慧间呢也
The
不会退失，
view
这
or
就是
the
我们所
eye
谓的
of
就是六
seeing
种
such
智
kind
呢
of
就是六种这个
liberation
智慧正无所色的，就是六
will
种
not
法，那这个
retrogress.
就是我们
So
前面已
those
经
are
讲了。
the 6
然后
that pertains
在后
to
面
the
的这个
realization.
话就是彼之三世也皆之现睡
His
醒
three
外
activities are preceded by primordial wisdom and display themselves in its likeness. In its likeness,
然后
he
无碍
manifests
广
his
大
vast
智恒常
definitive
入三
knowing,
世
always
正
unhindered in
为
its
为
vision of
众
the three times.
专
By such
专
insight,
大
he
妙
is
法论
fearless and
具
supremely
大悲胜
turns
者
the
佛
great
陀
wheel
所
of
证
the
的
pure
道，
Dharma
就
for
是这个
beings
呢，佛
endowed
陀就
with
是刚才
great
前面讲
compassion
的
and
身体和语言
uh,
这个
and
事业
quintessence
所摄
of
的，就是那
victory
么也
are
就是
what the
智慧为
Buddhas
限制，智
will
慧为
find.
后，就是一直这样的，这是三种
Previously,
什么
we've
呢？
already
就是
studied
戒指
that
现随
all
行，这
the
个是三种智慧所摄
three
的这个功能。
activities of the
然后
Buddha
无碍
are
广大智恒
led
常入三世的话
by
那就是佛
wisdom.
陀这个无碍的
It
这
is
种
preceded by
无住
wisdom
外的这个智慧呢，
in
让
terms
了智
of
未来
the
过去
three
的这个
activities
三种
of
一
body,
切
speech,
事
and
的
mind.
所
And
指
then
那么这个是智慧所摄的，就是三种这个三种功德啊，就是三种功德。那么正位为重，就是因为佛陀呢已经有18不共法的
And
这
then the
样的一
Buddha
种证悟啊，就是这样的证悟。
holds
那么
such
这样
kind
的
of
话呢，就是他无有畏惧
attainment
的
of
对
the
于众
18
生呢，就是
unmixed
可以这个
features.
转这个大
With
法门
those unmixed
就是无畏
features, the
畏惧
Buddha
我们
turns the
对
wheel
对
of
这
the
个
Dharma for the
转大
sentient
法门的
beings
话呢，就是有时候
fearlessly.
畏惧啊，有时候
Sometimes,
是
whenever it's
没有
our
安
turn to
全
turn
感
the
啊，
Dharma
这个
wheel to
当
give
当
teachings
在
to
这
the
样。佛
others,
陀
we
是
feel
因为有这样的18不共法
insecure
的，
and we
我们也
feel
不会有这样的
fearful.
18不法的
But
这个
if we were to
转大法
attain
轮
the
转
kind
小
of
法轮都没问题。
attainment just like the
转大
Buddha,
法轮
then
那么居大悲
we
胜
would
者啊，就是
no
佛陀是
longer
具
be
有这个
fearful
救度
of
一切众
anything.
生
So
的
that
这个大
is
慈大悲心。还
the
有呢，他是圣智，
fearlessness
他
of
胜
the
过什么
Buddha.
呢？就是所有的天魔与魔当这个四魔为主的一
On
切
top
这
of
个
that, the Buddha
这个
surpassed
那么
that
佛
of
陀呢，
the
就是这
four
这就是我们这
maras,
个世界上呢，
the
就是
Mara of death,
这
the
个
Mara
唯
of
一的这个
celestial diva,
远离一
and
切各
so
然
on.
的这个佛陀啊，就是远离一切各然的这个
He
佛
is
陀。
the
所
only
以
one
我们在这个
who's
世界上呢，就是这
who
就是一切
conquered the
众
four
生的
maras.
什么真
And
正的
the
这个大
Buddha
色就像是这个大庄严论经里面
whom
呢，就是说是世界
acquired all of
对
those
心意无
unmixed
非
features
色
and
为
great
一
qualities
切
is
众
indeed
生助于
the
亲
great teacher of
最
all
亲密
sentient
嘛，就
beings.
是这样这样的，
Of
就是这个在这个世界
the
上呢，就是佛陀所
sutra
无与伦
of
比
the
的，也就是说主
great
要呢。就是
ornament
他
of the
对
great
所有的这个
ornament
众
of
生呢，
Mahayana
就是
Sutra
成
Shastra,
为
it
是
states
真
that
正的这个
the only
护主啊，
one
就
who
是
is of
最
great
最亲近的这个
compassionate
所以我们其他的有一些
being in
你的
this
朋
world,
友
that
啊，你
is the
的这个
Buddha,
亲人啊，这
his
些
mind
对你
is
好的
not
时候就是他
deluded,
对你很好
his
的，
mind is
如果
not
对你不好的话，那
defiled
可能你不一定
for the benefit
你
of
对他不
sentient
好的话呢，
beings.
他也对你不一定是
He
完全好
is
的。那
indeed
佛
the
陀完
best
全
friend of
所
all
以这个世
sentient
界
beings.
上为什么
Unlike
我
the
们就是
worldly
这个
friends,
佛陀的
whatever
这
we
个
consider
情话，
or
佛陀的
whomsoever
这
we
种
would
包容
consider
的
as
心，佛
our
陀的这
friends,
种
they
这
would
个
be
严
nice
正
to
这
us
个
whenever
正当
we're
的
nice
心
to
的话，
them.
世间
But
凡夫人是确实是
whenever
没
we
办法相比的，就没
are
办法相比
under
的。
the control of afflictions
那
and
最后
stopped
一个
being
这
nice to
个
them,
今
they
天的这个这
seem
个是
to
一个18
no
不共
longer
法
be
呢，就是他
nice
前面有这个
or
失控
be
的
kind
心
to us,
为
but the
什么
Buddha
失
is
控的心？
completely
其实
different.
这个
And
叫做
then
我们
the
先
next
我们
one
讲
talks
佛
about
法
the
的所
Buddha
用的这个，不知道大家记不记得？那么低等所举法，反而废
with
举。
the metaphor, with the example of space. Over here it says that the nature of any
它首先呢，
properties
就是给你
native
就是
to
用
earth
比
and
喻
so
来讲
on
啊，
is
就是
not
我
the
们
nature of
实践当
space.
中的四大，就是四大是什么呢？就是地水火风。那
Any
四
of
大的
the
发相是什么
properties
呢？
native
大家
to
都
the
知
four
道，地的发
elements,
相呢，它
the
是
four
这个坚
elements, that is earth, water, fire, and air. And each of those elements have various properties to them. For example, earth is a solid, and water is moist, and then fire is heat, also the air is accommodation or accommodating. So the four elements, air is moving, ever moving and wavering. So the four kinds of elements are very different than the nature of space, because space is unobscured. Space does not have any solidity within it, and it does not obstruct any other phenomena. It is unconditioned compared to the others, the other elements. The Buddha in our world can be only compared with the space, because out of the four elements, they are all conditioned Dharma, but the space is unconditioned Dharma. Therefore, the space is of great difference than the conditioned four elements. For such reason, the space cannot be mixed with. We cannot mix the quality of space in the other four conditioned phenomena. The ordinary beings have the quality of ceasing, of birth and death, arising and ceasing. But the Buddha, though manifesting in such a way that there is birth and death, in fact, there is no birth and death in its true nature. The ordinary beings, usually we would use the examples of the four elements to describe the worldly beings, but we would use the space, the unconditional Dharma, to describe, or use an example to describe the Buddha. The element of earth is of great difference than the element of space. As earth is conditioned, and it has a different quality than the space, there is nothing that is shared in terms of its quality with space and earth. So on one hand, we may feel that the Buddha seems to be very similar to the ordinary beings, as the ordinary beings also have birth and death, and same as the Buddha, or at least from his manifestation. However, if you were to delve into the profundity of the Buddha, you would be able to see that the Buddha's quality is unmixed with the qualities of the ordinary. How can you measure the quality of the unconditioned with the conditioned? People without understanding of the Buddha, people do not know what the Buddha, the qualities and the unique merits of the Buddha. They would feel that they are very similar to the Buddha, though maybe they are not prince like the Buddha, and other aspects they feel that they can relate to the Buddha just like an ordinary being. But if you were to study the various unmixed qualities of the Buddha, you will be able to see that the Buddha is very different than ordinary beings indeed. The space is of the nature of unobstructed, and from the ordinary beings' perspective, we feel that there are some commonality between all of us with the Buddha. We feel that we are born all as human beings. There's the similarities like such. However, there are the unique qualities and merits and features of the Buddha. And such kind of qualities are completely unmixed and completely unique in this world. Look at the space. In fact, there's no way for us to describe anything similar of the space to that of the earth or the other elements at all. I really hope that through this teaching you will be able to see how we are common to the Buddha, and most importantly, how we are not common to the Buddha. We're not the same with the Buddha at all. As an ordinary being within limitless, as an ordinary being, how can you speak of the various merits and unmixed qualities of the Buddha, even if we were to manifest into immeasurable numbers of lips and tongues to only talk about the virtues of the Buddha, we can't expound it to its fullness. Let's not even go that far. Let's look at how we can develop, or how we, in fact, used our effort and time to engage in the study and practice of the virtuous Dharma. The majority of our times are wasted in distraction, in idleness. Of course, we are mundane beings. We have not attained any fruition. We cannot fathom the realization of the Buddha, and we cannot fathom such kind of qualities of the Buddha, and don't even mention about compare our qualities to the Buddha. So we should constantly look at our own qualities and compare ourselves to the Buddha as well, and look at how the Buddha is unique and mixed with our qualities. This time, I think we've delved into the qualities of the Buddha in great depth, and now we have the opportunity to understand who the Buddha is and how the Buddha is. I hope through this teaching, your faith towards the Buddha and towards the Dharma would be more steady, and I hope that whenever you look at the Buddha statue and look at the lamas, you would generate a great faith, and the kind of faith that would not retrogress. Unlike there are people who get enthusiastic and very excited whenever they see the teacher and the Buddha, but then whenever they encounter adversities, they would give up right away. But I believe with the studying of the profound qualities of the Buddha, and once delve into the depth of the teaching of the Dharma, your faith would be more grounded in logic as well as progress that would help you to progress along the path. The sadhana of Shakyamuni Buddha, the sadhana of the chantings that we usually have before class and after class, I noticed that many of you are already familiar with those chantings. So for people with a sense of firm faith and a sense of confidence in the Dharma, we should make such aspiration to practice and study with great diligence, and we should continuously long for the virtuous deeds, just like the Buddha. So today we've finished talking about the first 32 qualities of the Buddha.
Chubum tsunin drova